Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 179 of the Nope Coach podcast, The Process of Becoming You. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg. Yesterday, I was reading a poem by Brianna West, and it's short, so I'll share it with you. I thought becoming myself was improving each part, piece by piece, but it was finding a hidden wholeness, seeing the fractures as the design. And that has me really thinking. I know for myself, a lot of the people I work with, are really into personal development, self-improvement, lifelong learners. And there is part of that self-improvement. There are areas or there are aspects, there are habits that you want to unpack or habits that you want to create. But listening to that poem, I thought becoming myself was improving each part piece by piece, but then finding the hidden wholeness in the fractures. That had me thinking of that Japanese art. Is it kintsugi? So for anyone who's not familiar with it, in kintsugi, I think it's like a form of pottery. So say a bowl has been cracked or broken. When they're repairing it, instead of trying to hide the cracks or the breaks, they fill them with gold so that they shine out. And that's just, it's so beautiful, because I think, when we are trying to, change ourselves, I know for me, when I was releasing weight, the excess skin, the stretch marks, the parts that, weren't so pretty to see, the evidence of my previous self used to really bother me. And I've had a lot of surgeries over the years, a lot of, I've had a couple of cesareans, I've had a lot of surgery around different things that I've needed. So I've got a lot of scars. And it's like, what if you saw each scar, each stretch mark, each bit of skin as like that kintsugi, and we celebrated that, seeing those, scars as like ribbons of, how far we've come. How different would we approach our lives? And then the more we become ourselves, like the process of becoming you is celebrating our uniqueness and individuality, rather than hiding those things so that we can become more like everybody else. In days of old, when we were more tribal in nature, we had to fit in. To be different was to be cast out. But the way that the world is going, and, depending on where you live, of course, but for many of us, we don't have to conform to ways to fit into everyone else. And often our uniqueness, our kintsugi, is the part that attracts people to us, like our friends and, the people we work with us because we're unique, because we're different, because we stand out, because we get it. I think the realness and the rawness is often lost when we're trying to be like everybody else. Another thing I'm reminded of, I mentioned on yesterday's episode, I'm listening to Making It So by Patrick Stewart. Now, I'm not to the part of the book yet where he speaks about X-Men. I'll be curious to see how much he speaks about it. I imagine he'll spend a long time talking about Star Trek, but he was also in the X-Men movies. And in one of the movies, there's a character called Mystique, and so the X-Men are mutants. They have superpowers. And her superpower was that she could shapeshift. She could take on the appearance of anyone. But naturally, her natural skin color was blue, like a vibrant, glorious blue. And I remember reading a couple of interviews with the actress, and she was saying it took over 6 hours to get her into full makeup to do a scene. And there's another character in X-Men 2 called the Amazing Nightcrawler. He can teleport, and he is green. He's a really dark green. And there's the X-Men, and then there's the other people who are also mutants, but they're bad, in inverted commas. I use that loosely. Like, there's the good guys and the bad guys kind of story. Anyway, so the amazing Nightcrawler, who's green, and Mystique, who are blue, are like on the bad side. And there's this scene where the Nightcrawler is looking at Mystique, and it was like, why don't you look like everybody else? Like, why do you insist on your natural skin when we're not, on missions? Because you could look like everybody else. And she just looks back at him and says, well, I shouldn't have to. Don't quote me exactly on that because I haven't watched the movie in quite some time, but that scene has always stayed with me, because when I have been, releasing weight or growing a business or, doing, some sort of goal, often you seek to experts or people who tell you you've got to do it this way because you want to be like everybody else. And I love that scene. It's just like, well, I shouldn't have to. The fact that she only did that when she needed to for her, work or mission or whatever. But other than that, she just embraced the totality of who she was, is something that I've always aspired to. Because when you do things differently and you disrupt the status quo and you don't conform, a lot of people can get affronted by it. I've done an episode previously. It was titled something like, you're not responsible for people's reactions to you. Like, you're 100% responsible for your actions, but people are going to have thoughts and feelings, and sometimes they're going to be quite vocal about it, but that isn't your responsibility. But the more you allow yourself the process of becoming you, who you truly are, piece by piece, the more it may, disrupt the status quo, make some people uncomfortable. But the deeper than that, like when you can hold the line and follow that through, the people who love you and admire you are going to love you and admire you so much more, because you're shining a light and being a beacon for them to do the same. It's boring when we're all carbon copies of each other and we all parrot the same narrative and we all, have the same discussions day in and day out. It's like Groundhog Day. But, when we can inhabit a bit of our inner mystique and allow ourselves, our natural selves, to be leading, because we shouldn't have to be any other version of ourselves, I think that's when the game really starts to change. Love to hear your thoughts. Please comment on YouTube or share it up on socials, tag me. But, how is the process of becoming you unfolding for you? And how do you feel to know that, like, you don't need to fix yourself piece by piece? You don't need to fix yourself at all because you're not broken. But it's not a process of going through each part piece by piece and, seeing the fractures, but really zooming out and seeing the whole and filling it with gold and allowing your kintsugi to shine through. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you're not already on my email list, head over to suzanneculberg.com, click on newsletter, sign up. I'd love to visit your inbox once a week or so. I send unique content that I don't share here. And yeah, thanks for today. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.